is this? What's your operating number?
Hello there. My name is Parker, and I'm the creator of SWUDB and co-host of the Force Unlimited podcast.
Hello there.
General Kenobi.
Hello there indeed. It is another episode of Hello There. I am Flake. I'm joined this time by none other than somebody whom you have probably taken advantage of. You've exploited his good efforts over time. It is Parker, the creator of SWUDB, Star Wars Unlimited database, and also the co-host of the Force Unlimited podcast. Welcome, Parker.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. I owe my entire social media presence to you. So
no, you don't. Don't start with
that. You were the one who told me to get on Twitter, and if I had, and it's the constant affirmations and complaints that come in daily that probably keep me going. So excited to be here. Very excited to be here.
More affirmations than complaints, I hope. I hope that the complaints are at least constructive to a degree.
Oh, it's almost just a nonstop. Please develop, please implement. But more, it's just the seeing decks, seeing stuff get used is just keeps you going. So
it's fascinating that you mentioned that, because legitimately, I just last Thursday or something like that. We're recording on the 15th of April. It's a Monday, but I have another podcast, the Instant Speed podcast. It's a Flesh and Blood podcast. I did an episode essentially talking about the toxicity of Twitter and the ramifications of it, and the consequences. And I had said, and I stand by this, I said, if I could get off Twitter, I would. But it just so happens that to a degree I can't. So I'm glad that I say that I would get off Twitter and then dragged you into it. That's the first bit. That's almost. I
don't know. I get a little saucy sometimes in Discord because I describe myself as a relaxed pedant. So a lot of times I want to clarify, and I have maybe an overly formal cadence, and those two can combine to come across as rough, but always assume good intentions and block aggressively, right? Mute aggressively.
Oh, yes.
There's just in life, there's not worth dealing with any negativity. So
well,
but this is I'm just excited to finally actually talk to you. So
it's great. And this is what's fun about this, is that you and I have interacted countless times in various capacities for various different reasons, but this is the first sort of face-to-face that you and I get. And I wanted people out there, and that has sort of been the mission for a while, is there's something good out there. There's a very useful, helpful, a catalyst for growth for the game, and you are responsible for that. And I want more people to recognize the personality behind a tool that so many people are using right now, which is SWUDB.com, Star Wars Unlimited database. Before we get to that, I just want to ask you a little bit of your origin story and get a little bit of those seeds planted so people kind of know where you came from a TCG capacity. So what is that story?
Are you familiar with Neil Gaiman's Marvel 1602? It's a comic book.
Yep, set in the 1600s, yeah.
Yeah, so it's Marvel's story, but set during the Elizabethan era. My origin story is the same one as Tyler Parrott, just set older, further back in time. Also a middle school kid, artsy and weird theater crowd. Saw some kids playing Magic the Gathering, asked some questions, bought some starter decks with my best friend. Although back in my day, they weren't precons. They were just a randomized 60 cards. And you were hopeful that you would get something resembling a deck out of those. And got in during the 90s heyday. I played a lot of. I remember opening Wyvern and being like, wait, this is just Magic, but with only dragons. I really enjoyed Spellfire, Decipher, Star Wars, and Star Trek. I got really into maybe one of the few people, SimCity and Illuminati. Hey, there we go. I was really fascinated by card games that weren't just dude bashers, just two people fighting. And then I took a break in college about Invasion, Odyssey, Onslaught block that year. I decided to get out. I had to spend money on things like textbooks and alcohol and women. And so then there was a break for a while. And when I came back to card games, I came back by way of Game of Thrones. And I was ready to start getting into card games again. And then suddenly, wait, they'll just tell me what cards are in the pack? That's incredible. That's amazing. And so I got into Game of Thrones. I got into Netrunner. I think I have played every LCG that FFG put out, as well as a few others like Ashes. I thought I'd sworn off the randomized booster pack economic model, but I was brought back in. I saw how they tried to do limited. I own still many unopened Netrunner limited packs, and when they said this was going to be a limited first game, I said, okay. Like that was like probably one of the big moments for me where May 9th was Jim Cartwright's interview with Polygon, and I was, I saw the announcement. I was like, okay, here we go again, FFG. But then I saw that interview, and I have a soft spot. I have a weakness for people who acknowledge their own like past mistakes or weaknesses. And that interview, I was like, wow, their first salvo is saying there have been some rough spots. And I said, okay, I just went from, curious to interested. And then they started talking about limited right off the bat, and I was in. I'm in a place in my life where I can buy limited packs. I want to play some limited. Out of the 3 big official limited events I've done, I've opened Vader twice. So I'm having a great time playing limited Star Wars Unlimited.
I would say. I mean, that's definitely a good way to get into the game, is when you're just busting up ripping open some of the actual, like the hot and heavy stuff and having a good time. But, that's the beauty of this, is that everybody's, that sort of initial, that launch pad where they kind of get into TCGs. A lot of this is to a degree age related, I would suspect. I mean, myself, Tyler, I'm 38. Tyler, I think, is sort of more or less around the same age as I am. I don't know how old you are, or if you care to disclose.
I mean, that's weird. I'm 41. And so, but I got out. College was, Invasion Block was college for me. So, for me, it was just one of those things where it's like you choose where you spend your money.
Yeah.
And when you have a little of it, you have to be more aggressive. And then when you have more of it, you can start going, exploring hobbies that you swore off when you were younger. So,
but here we are. I mean, amidst a brand new game that is taken off like crazy, and you have a very big footprint. Your footprint within this game is felt by so many, because I know that from the get-go, when you sort of just launched this, we jumped on it, I jumped on it, and I'm very much the type of person where if, and databases and things like this are, I don't say they're a dime a dozen, but they exist, multiple variants of it that are out there, and I always encourage people to go and do what they want. But I'll say this, like for other card games that I've been involved in, I've been very selective of which I choose to use and otherwise direct people to, and a lot of that is because of the people behind it and the type of person who's running it. For you yourself, you're somebody whom from the get-go I was just very, I wanted you to succeed, and you have done so. But I want to ask you from the very first iteration of SWUDB, that first spark in your mind, when did the idea to create SWUDB just kind of pop up? When did that happen?
Well, honestly, I bought the domain, right away. Every FFG game has had a DB, starting, I think, was Thrones DB, Netrunner DB. I use Arkham DB and Marvel CDB constantly. And so as soon as the game was announced, I started registering names. I actually registered the Force Unlimited, thinking, similar to like Fabrary, like a name that's related to but different. And then I was just like, wow, there's no way a 5-letter .com domain name is still free in 2023. That's impossible. But I checked, and lo and behold, SWUDB was available, and I bought it. And I had no actual plans on that day to do anything with it. I wanted to be involved in the discussion with in the formation of a community. I'm a parent. I got 2 small kids. Both of them love Star Wars. And TCG communities can be rough. Star Wars fandom has a lot of highs, but it has some lows and can be rough. And so my original intention when I bought SWUDB was to just hand it off to someone who seemed like a good egg. I had left other card games just due to bigotry and closed offness to newcomers and just a generally unwelcoming atmosphere. And I was like, I don't want that, because I want to play this game, but also I came to Star Wars by way of my kids. So I want them to be able to show up and play tabletop with me at my store. And that means we've got to build a community where that's welcome and fun. And so I bought it. And then a couple weeks later, I was looking for a tech. I needed a portfolio project. I work in closed source code. Nobody outside my company will ever see it. And I had a tech that I wanted to explore for the few people among your listeners who follow these things, HTMX, and I wanted to try that out. And I was like, I could do this. Like, there's probably just, in my head, it was inevitable that SWUDB was just going to be another copy of Thrones DB. But I was like, I could do this. And so I had a week where I was light on parental responsibilities, and I just started working on it. And the goal was always, my chief inspiration has always been some combination of like Arkham DB and Scryfall. I think the best DBs are really thin, right? Like, nobody cares about me. Like, I mean, if you do, you're listening to my podcast, but like, nobody wants my opinion on things. You want, I trade in other people's IP, right? This is Fantasy Flight's game, their rules. This is the artist's art. These are competitors and content creators' decks. And so the goal should be to give this stuff created by other people to the consumer as quickly and thinly as possible. That's why there's no art on the main page. It's why, we've all been in an airport with bad Wi-Fi, or in a convention center with 5,000 people who are all slamming the Wi-Fi, or in a bathroom on the edge of Wi-Fi. And you're trying, my digital games before this were Marvel Snap and Runeterra, and their DB websites are gorgeous and they're always nice, but they're also just so heavy. And, sometimes you need to know, does the card say may, right? Is this a effect that I have to do, or I may do? And you're in an argument on Discord or Reddit or something. You're like, no, this is the way it is. This is why this card is good or bad. And you're trying to pull up that card, and the website's just trying to load so much stuff. And so, I mean, part of the inspiration for SWUDB was to try to make sure there was a DB that was light enough that I could get it when I had bad Wi-Fi. Like, I didn't want a lot of stuff. Just show me the card, show me the ability, maybe show me some comments on it, and then get out of the way. So that was I didn't expect it to be much bigger than like Netrunner DB, Arkham DB. So it's been a year. It's been a wild year.
It looks exactly as you kind of. What's fascinating about this is that, like, I was there from, I guess, the birth of it. The first time I caught wind of it and started using it, the progression of it has been exceptional. And like you mentioned, it still has that really lean approach where you're right, because I've been in so many convention centers where all I want to do is just find out a ruling on a particular card, the precise ruling on a card or this or that. And like, you're right. It's, if you've got to download all the bells and whistles and all the sparkly gifts that are going on, like, then it becomes problematic. Yours is very to the point. And I like what you mentioned there. It's that you've kind of created this, you're facilitating what everybody else has sort of worked on, and I'm the same way. Like, I try to tell people this too. It's like, when I have a podcast and have someone on, it's not about me. It's about showing you, I give better access to somebody who does better things than I do. In this case, it's you, and SWUDB is there. But you talked about how coding is what you do during the day, but no one will ever see it. So there is definitely experience there, but there's got to be a massive workload that's involved with this versus what you do for a living. And I get it. This has a lot less consequence on your life in the capacity of, hey, this doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't pay the mortgage or feed my kids or whatever. But how much work is involved on a weekly basis, let's say? Like, how many hours are you spending a week on SWUDB?
Probably 10 to 15. It's ramping up. At first, I was, up through probably January, I was getting by just like an hour after the kids went to bed. And then as the game is launched, March was pretty brutal. At the end of January, there was 1,000 users, and I was really excited about that. I remember like like dancing in my kitchen with my wife, like, oh my god, there's like actual real number of people using this. This is pretty incredible. I checked this morning in anticipation of this call, and there's 22,000 and change, and like that's been a lot of scaling. And so there's also just all the I'd still say I probably eke out 8 to 10 hours of actual coding, but then around that is learning and research. There's all the customer service, like all the emails that come in, and the DevOps, learning how to maintain a server. Like at my work, I just make stuff and then I give it to someone else and they put it on the internet. I make it and then I'm responsible for putting it on the internet. And there's a lot of that just infrastructure around that. And so, yeah, probably, I mean, it's hard to quantify, but probably upwards of 10 to 15 hours a week. My wife and I have started since launch, acknowledging that this is starting to become a big part of my life and that I should carve out some awake time. Like programming when you're exhausted after a day of programming in kids is a lot. So, maybe there should be some time when I'm energized. But all of that also comes on, it blurs together because that comes on the heels of my Star Wars Unlimited time, right? It's Monday. You asked me to be on the show on Thursday. So since you asked me to be on the show, I went to my OP, my organized play night, a sealed escalation league at Red Castle Games. I got to play a bunch of games there. I've got a Brown Batman Bombing Run Chewie deck that is almost constructed viable just purely from Limited. I was watching Yeti from the Artificery. They're setting up their streaming rig. And I was talking to them about that. On Friday, I'm in the Space Arena Ground Arena webcam league, and I was playing my match on Friday. On Saturday and Sunday, Ned and I played our games for our show, and then we recorded our episode, and now it's Monday. So none of that is Star Wars, SWUDB time, but that's all Star Wars Unlimited time. So it kind of blurs, right? Like if I'm sitting in the waiting room for the Wednesday stream, I mean, I'd probably be doing that if there wasn't a SWUDB. Like I'd probably just be doing that as a fan. I'm more aggressive in carving that time out because of SWUDB. But so it gets tricky to count how much of it is just me as a fan and how much of it is me as a dev. But that's really, I mean, I think of it as kind of the hair club for men effect, where like I'm not only the developer of SWUDB, I'm also a user, right? Like I built it in part so that I could have those conversations. Like, no, this card is strictly better than this other card, etc.
Damn right. I mean, Ron Popeil, he uses a Postamator, like a Postamatic.
Yeah, yeah, right.
He didn't
exactly,
just make
right?
it. Yeah,
yeah. You got to live it. High in your own supply. You got to just get in there, eat your own dog food. Like,
yeah.
So it's hard to tell, but I'd probably have to guess. Is it customer service when I get an email from somebody I don't know? Sure. When I get a Discord message saying, hey, this doesn't seem to be working, from somebody I've had a beer with who uses the site, is that okay? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it blurs. This has taken over my life in just all of Star Wars Unlimited in a big way, but probably 15 hours of dedicated development,
which is good because that's a fat number. Like think about it, 15 hours a week is over 2 hours a day is what it averages out to. And that is for, I'll say, I'm like, can I venture a guess here and say that your revenue off of this is pretty much probably in the red after you talk about expenses, etc.?
If you value my time at zero, so far SWUDB is, thanks to Patreon, marginally profitable, like to a very small, like measured in packs, not boxes.
Correct. But
so
just to sort of interject here, that's with the assumption that the time that you are investing in this is worth absolutely nothing, which I have to really pull the curtain back on this, because this is a very massive aspect of this, and not just of SWUDB or coding or any type of website generation, of content creation in general, which is what you're doing. Let's just be clear about this. And I've had this conversation with dozens of people. One of the questions I get asked very often is, how do I get into content creation as a career? And the first thing I always tell them is make sure that The thing that you're doing the content of is that you would do it for free, that you would even pay to do it, that the stuff that the source material that you are trying to expand on, create, and really dig into, that sandbox, you have to be able to be willing to pay access to get into it and then have no one watch it. And the sobering thing I tell people is I did about 2,000 hours of content before I saw my first paycheck resulting in it. So when I factor things in, I'm thinking about the amount of hours I input versus what I'm getting paid now, and I'm still in the red, like when you're thinking about all of that. So that is just an element that I really want people who are listening to this to really be attuned to, is you are valuing your time at zero, and we are valuing your time immeasurably because of how much we're putting into, or we're getting out of your efforts. So
I think of the old adage, like, what's the best way to make a little money in art? Step one, start with a lot of money, right? Like, and so, like, this is never, it's one of the reasons this has never been a financially driven project. I'm a lawyer who became a software developer. There are easier ways for me to make money. This is very much for me, just, I want it, I have opinions. I want it to be kind of the way I want it to be. And so I'm making it the way I want to make it. I don't think about the money too much. The goal was always, it needs to be kind of, the monthly server bills need to be less than the amount that I bring in, because that's, the household finances, and the kind of pie in the sky dream was that it would pay for my SWU hobby, right? Like, if I don't have to explain to my wife how much Darth Vader costs, then I'm gold. Like, who cares? Then it's just hobby time, and that's great. And it's creeping up on reaching that level, and then I stopped thinking about it. I stopped caring. I mean, like, people ask about, a lot of tying into like TCG Player and things like that, and I understand the value in that, but I'm coming from an LCG background where everything's a flat cost. So the idea of thinking about all these things and tying it in, and I feel like that's where so many websites go so fast, because that's in theory where you can get some money through the affiliate links and everything. But I don't want to. I mean, I'd rather spend time on like Twin Suns, on tournaments, on cubes, on enabling different ways of engaging with the game than just finding another way to figure out. I mean, if you care that much about the cost of the cards, like, TCG Player is there, right? Like, there's whole apps about the TCG ecosystem, and that's not my background. I haven't bought a single. I bought my first single like 2 weeks ago, right? Like, there's finance, and there's market watching, and there's discussing all this stuff, and I'm not primed for that, and I don't think about it that way. So that's been a weird thing, is there's clearly money, because you can tell by the people who are like circling around things and talking about things. As the game has blown up, there's suddenly a lot of people who are interested in tying into things and generating revenue, and it's just like, I just want to build a cube, man. Like, so figuring that out has been a ride. Luckily, I'm comfortable having those conversations, but it was a bit unexpected.
Well, we are very grateful for it, and for obviously the time that you put into it, because we have, like we said, we've squeezed so much juice out of this coconut, and my goodness, there's so much more to go. But one of the things I do want to ask you about specifically is, I mean, if you don't already, I highly recommend that you follow Parker on socials and such, because you have a very sharp wit to you. And one of them is that I have noticed that this has also sort of maybe weaseled its way into some might say Easter eggs that you might find within SWUDB, one of which was brought to my attention. I thought I was going crazy, but it is true. I looked it up. It is from our Discord, from the Ice Cave Radio Discord. SWU on, it looks to me like it was April 8th, was building a deck, and the randomly generated name for this deck, because if you go to SWUDB and you create a deck, it will auto-populate just a random name based on, I don't know what the algorithm is, but the one that was populated for SWU was this. The deck title was Maybe Charmer Will Love Me Now. So I want to ask you, first of all, obviously, what control do you, as a master puppeteer, have for for putting words into this random generator and such?
So two things. I actually have to credit you with this. I suspect you with this, Flake. So early on, when people were trying to spell out the domain name SWUDB a lot, and I was like, no, I'm fine with people calling it Star Wars Unlimited. That's, I mean, whatever. People call the game whatever they want, but SWUDB.com is 6 syllables. It's too many, and it's SWUDB. And so I set up the website so that there was a 10% chance that when you load it up, instead of SWDB as a card database or whatever, it says SWOODEEBE. It spells it out phonetically. And once I had that idea that sometimes it should be rare. I had a randomized deck name, right? Color, science fiction character as a randomized name generator. And then I was like, well, what if there was a rarity similar to the cards? I was thinking about it during a stream, talking about all the rarities and the chances of getting them. And so then I started filtering in. There's now 3 tiers. I've got my common name, which is just color and science fiction character. There's an uncommon set of names that are still prevalent, but a little less so, which is essentially funny nouns and adjectives and things. And then getting into the rares, which are phrases from the community, mapping content creator names to phrases. It was always mildly mortifying when the first one that I saw anybody reveal in the wild was maybe Danny Schaefer will love me now, and that one was like the day after the line was drawn on the sand of who's going to Minnesota and who wasn't. And it was just like, oh man, that timing, like it had to be one of the FFG devs. It couldn't have been there's like 40 content creator names in that person. It generates names based on the user, their collection, things like that. And hopefully definitely before Shadows of the Galaxy releases, I have a legendary tier list of names that will actually have some real world implications that I'm working on. But I'm a tabletop role-playing game guy at heart. That's my strong background in nerdetry of choice. So like randomized table names gets me right in the heart, right? Like that's what I live for. So
can I assume that is Doa's name somewhere circulating?
Oh, it's entirely possible that Doa, Flake, and Ice Cave Radio are in the system.
That is so cool.
So you might get a deck like Ice Cave Radio will rue the day as your suggested deck name. And
we always rue the day.
So there's it's as there are more content creators, the chances of any one given content creator's name go down, which makes it even more amazing when it lines up right when it's when the best is when it's a co-host gets it for one of their other hosts.
Oh yeah,
as they're that's just that's the best. So I don't know. Most of the time people don't care, just make a randomized name. But I hate when it's new deck 3.
Yeah,
right, like that, and that's your deck name. It's that gives you nothing. Sometimes you're just wanting to mess around, starting with something where you're okay, so I need to make a turquoise Green Lantern. What is turquoise Green Lantern? But suddenly a color kind of points you towards aspects and archetypes. There's a kind of psychology of what am I building here? So
it also helps you to sort of just remember what the deck is doing. I mean, for example, you might immediately forget that you parked in level 4 A17, but if you go and park somewhere that's called Your Mother's a Bitch, you'll totally take that home with you. You will never forget that.
You'll never forget it.
Yeah, because you'll want to come back to that parking spot and show it who's boss. That'll stick with you.
And I think that's part of it, is that at first I was kind of man, when people would publish decks with the randomized name, I'm why are you publishing it? But then I realized if it's your 7th Han deck of the week that you're working on, how many iterations of Han do you need to have a clever name for? At a certain point, there is this blue Han archetype and everything exists within it, but how are you naming it within there? And that's just, then if the deck proposes new deck 3, you're okay, well now I have to give it an actual name, but your neck name is going to be Blue Han 7th iteration. That's also not easy. Whereas
I mean,
talking about in Discord, you're okay, scrolling up, you can just be okay, so that chartreuse Superman deck what's wrong with it is, right? It gives you a tag to hang on and talk about. So,
as a Palpatine main for the most part, I'm glad that the prequels exist, because there are so many stupid meme phrases that I have. I have a deck called "I Am the Senate." I have a deck called "It's Treason." Then I have another one that's like "I will be watching your career with great interest" and stuff like that. Like, I just have all kinds of great Sheath Palpatine lines to name my decks, but I don't have many for Iden Versio, so like.
And I leave Star Wars out of it, like very explicitly, because people have all of their favorite Star Wars moments and characters and things that, you know, there's none of that. But a final note on that of like, I look forward to you randomly generating a deck about the cat's anatomy. So,
oh, sweet! I am looking forward to it. I do have like 10
play
or
the
11
game long
decks.
enough. Right?
That's it. I'm saying, hey, I've been ripping packs forever. I know the joy of ripping a legendary. So when the second I hit generate deck and that pops up, you are getting a screenshot, and so it'll be plastered all over the social media. I do also want to kind of give a little bit of spotlight here to the fact that, yes, you are a programmer and a coder or such by trade, and that's fine. But what a lot of people might not realize is the speed of execution and the timeliness in which something hits Twitter, something gets posted, something gets spoiled, and it seems like as soon as it crosses my path, which again, this is my career. This is what I do for a living. I am constantly plugged in 20 some odd hours a day to this stuff. So when something arises, I'm usually on it. And if I have a free moment, I'll add it to the show notes for an upcoming episode. And without fail, whether the card popped up 10 minutes ago, 10 hours ago, or 10 days ago, it is on SWUDB in all of its majesty of high-res glory, and it's there for my use. I think that a lot of people forget the fact that, or take maybe just, you know, I don't know, are not necessarily aware at just how quick on the draw you are that we may take for granted. And like you mentioned February, for example, I talk to Philip at February all the time, and Philip is somebody whom he knows when it's spoiler season that it is going to suck, because I don't even want to get into the Talishar stuff, which we'll talk about later, Talishar Karabast. But my God, I want to ask you, is this something that as soon as something pops up in your mind, you're like, oh God, like, we got to do this now? Or is it something where you're like, all right, I got till the end of the day to sort of pull the trigger on this?
Yes and no. For Spark of Rebellion, it was very much, I got to do it now. Because we didn't have real cards to play with. So the hypothetical cards were the only cards, and there's a lot of just integration, people wanting to be able to use it, talk about it, grab their own images of it, especially the ones that come out in video. So there was I felt like a slightly greater urgency to get it into the site as quickly as possible. I've been telling people and myself and my wife that with Shadows, I might slow down a few hours towards there's a more natural break and setting less of time. But because I'm like, well, we have real cards in our hand, so we can play with those. We don't need to be printing out copies of Shadows. We'll just wait till it shows up. That being said, I'm already there, right? Like I'm already in the stream or I mean, like as a fan, I'm jumping on. And if I'm already looking at it, like at this point, I've optimized the import process. I can do it from my phone. When I was when all of you were in Minnesota, I was at Disneyland, and I was like trying to be a good dad, but occasionally just like pulling the phone out and glancing down at Discord previews, being like, new one yet? And then I was able to upload it from my phone, which was a typo-ridden mess. But because I'm already there, right? I'm already hungry for those previews, and so as long as I'm, in theory, I reserve the right with Shadows to maybe slow down towards the end of the day, but I'm not going to wait till the end of the day to find out what the card is, right? Like, what? So-and-so's got a preview up on their, TikTok video or on Instagram or, on YouTube. Like, as soon as I can carve out time from family and kids and work, I'm going to go look at it, which is, I'm already there because I'm just as hungry as everybody else for the new cards. So
well, that's awesome. There's that video that you posted when you were at Galaxy's Edge. which was hilarious, by the way. Do you have that video? Can I piggyback off that to like close this episode out? Do you still have the file?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have the video. I have the files. I'll get them to you in the next. Yeah,
Perfect.
I'll get them to you today or tomorrow. Yeah.
So we're gonna put that video from you from Galaxy's Edge while we were in Minnesota, because the video was hilarious. It was great, and it's a nice little aperitif, as it were, if you want a little bit of Parker's humor, which you inject so brilliantly within the Star Wars Unlimited community. And we're talking about the success of SWUDB, the time invested. We also talked about the cost and the potential revenue that is part of it. You had just said that you are capable of actually kind of being quick on the draw, shooting from the hip, of just putting it on your phone and being able to streamline that upload process. So you're trying to diminish the time between reveal to accessibility on SWUDB. There's a question coming in from Gorilla Guile that is asking, acknowledging that app design and web design are wildly different, is there any feature that a SWUDB app it comes available for offline use? And you had mentioned and alluded to earlier about how you want to keep it lean because accessing the site through poor Wi-Fi conditions, bad connectivity, you want to be able to actually sort of maybe facilitate that or make that a little easier to access. But an offline app that you can update with whatever, is that something that you're capable of? Is it on the horizon? Is something similar in the pot?
I don't think so. I not because I don't know how to code it, and I don't, but I don't know. I didn't know how to do half the things that I've done for SWUDB last May. Like, this has just been a ton of learning on the job. But because I think there's essentially, when you want a thick client, when you want an app on a phone, you're solving one of two problems, and I don't think either of them are solvable. You're either trying to accommodate offline use, and that is just such a huge architectural shift in what SWUDB is, right? SWUDB is a database, you get info from it. Storing all of that, like, how do you store? I mean, there are I believe north of 500,000 decks on SWUDB, right? How do you store that on a phone, right? Like that it becomes difficult, and keeping it current and doing all this stuff on a phone. So there's a lot of information that would just be, it's essentially an entirely separate site and app and architecture to store on a phone. The other reason you have an app is because the interface through the web is bad, and you're trying to optimize for that. And I think if I need to pursue that, that's a failure of the SWUDB website, right? Like it could be better for mobile. I don't discount that. There's some orderings of things that I'm working on. But I firmly believe that at the end of the day, SWUDB is basically like, show me a picture of a card. Show me a list of cards, right? Show me some comments on a card or on a deck. And all of that, you should be able to navigate pretty easily just through a browser. So I don't think so, because I don't think it either solves a problem that is bigger than SWUDB, or it's a Band-Aid on a problem that could just be solved in SWUDB. So not opposed to the idea. One of my hopes one day is to have a public API, and then somebody else can build something that just scrapes everything off of SWUDB and goes into an app. And that's on the long-term roadmap, but it probably won't be developed by me. So
with that said, then what is sort of on the short term and the long term to-do list for SWUDB? We've seen a lot of improvements from just saying, hey, like, here's some new sets coming out, here's all the variants of the cards, here's how you can sort by artist. The sideboarding facilitation, I think, was definitely a big quality of life improvement as well. But just in general, what I love about SWUDB is that it's constantly evolving in the right way. Every time I go back, if like once a week, I'll notice a little improvement that I'm like, didn't even know I needed this. Glad it's there. And I'm curious, what is something that we can expect, let's say, within a month's time, and something that you're angling towards, let's say, 6 months down the line?
Okay. So I try to be, if you go to swudb.com/changelog, I keep track of everything I've done, and also kind of where my thoughts are on some roadmap items, because I think transparency is pretty key here. Like, people aren't paying me money other than Patreon subscribers who get their own emails, but people tend to latch onto websites and hang onto websites. And I think having transparency is really important. You know, content creators, especially, like, they're building articles, they're building videos, they have workflows. And so saying, hey, this is where I'm headed. This is what I want. Here's your chance to give me feedback. Like, this is a community driven thing. And so short term, right now I'm just kind of refining. Doing Twin Suns almost broke me mentally. I didn't realize how many places I had assumed 1 liter, and so having to go back to all those places and make it work for 2 liters broke me. So I'll be adding, like, deck price probably by the time this episode is out. Some refinements on the interface for Twin Suns deck building. Overarching, always, I want to get to a point where the site is completely international. It's a global game. SWUDB is trying to catch up. It's a lot. Not just the card images, but searching the cards in your native language and having the interface be mostly localized. It's why I lean so heavily on icons. And then I'm trying to build out some infrastructure for help. But those are my 2 kind of driving goals, is improving the infrastructure and making it global. Short term to medium term, right now, I'm working on tournament publishing. I watched Just Jack from Golden Dice struggle to try to publish 16 decks, and I realized that there needs to be a better, easier way to do that. So that'll probably be out within a month, is the ability to publish 16 decks simultaneously, all grouped together as a tournament, and to see how they all placed, label their pilot, right? And then you start getting that in, so that you can click from a deck. You're like, oh, this did 7th in the such and such 5K. What beat this deck? Or, you know, what was better than this deck? And you click into the tournament and see all that. So that's next. The search syntax, which is one of the driving purposes, I don't like having to click through. I know some people do, but I don't. Drop downs to filter cards. I want to be able to ask questions, because you know, it's not just please show me all the rebels, right? When the game gets mature, when we get to set 9, the one they're working on, it's not show me all the rebels, it's show me all the rebels who cost less than 3, who either have Sentinel or are in blue, right? Who are going for less than $7, right? Like, those are the questions that you want to answer. That exists. I want to put that in the deck builder so that you can just, while you're building a deck, you can just say, hey, I've got this weird, goofy, janky idea. What are all the lightsabers that don't have a vowel, you know, that have more vowels and consonants in the title, right? And, like, have that show up in the deck builder. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now, is tournaments and the syntax in the deck builder, and watching, you know, set 1 to 2 is such a big jump. So there's a lot of places in the site where it makes sense for 1 set, doesn't make sense for 2. It starts to become overwhelming. Where do we need to filter on sets? Where can we just, you know, right now deck building filters on sets, but the leaders and the bases don't, because I feel like that's less overwhelming, you know, but it will get overwhelming by set 3, set 4, when you don't want to scroll through 90 leaders. Then you want to filter. But for now, you don't want to use a shadows leader. Just don't pick it, right? Yeah. But you're not going to get confused. But when you're in the deck builder, like, people are going to forget, like, is this trooper in the shadows or is it in SOAR? You know, like, just so anyway, that's where I'm headed.
Well,
I welcome feedback. Like, I'm in so many Star Wars Unlimited Discords. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Reddit. Like, my email address is on the site. If you have thoughts, I've probably thought about them, but it's always really exciting when I haven't, when a new feature comes in, and I try to, like, implement quickly. Ryback had asked, he's like, hey, tournament forms. And I hadn't even thought, like, that was never on my radar as a thing people wanted or needed. I was like, oh yeah, that would make sense, like printing out a PDF. And so I made that. And now you can just go print any deck as a tournament form with your name on it and your Fantasy Flight ID number and get all that stuff on there. So please ask.
Oh, I have you well highlighted in our Discord. So whenever there's an issue, I just say he is at the top of the list.
I cannot express, Flake, how like how much warm fuzzy that is. When I noticed that I was like, oh, it's its own category. Oh man, like that just, like, every time I go into the Ice Cave Radio Discord, just like melts my heart.
Hey, now,
I love it so much.
It just means that
So-
your name is a different color and you're separate. You have actually less accessibility.
Right below.
Yeah, you're below Mouseroid, I think, is what you are. No, but it's up there because I want to highlight the people, the movers, the shakers, as it were, who are super influential. And like I said, their fingerprints are all over this game and the influence and the culture of the game. And one of those things that if I were to bet dollars to donuts against is being one of the next big seismic shifts of what Star Wars U and casually playing it will be. It's going to be Carabast, carabast.net. For those who are unaware, if you're coming from Flesh and Blood, the same developers who create Talishar.net, which is by legal definition, it is a quote-unquote rules enforcement platform, wherein which you basically, it's like playing the game digitally, but not. It's just meant there to sort of enforce the rules of the game. Now, Carabast is very much in its pre-alpha, whatever you want to call it, its embryonic stage. It's not even a thing that is, I think that it's worth looking into. However, I would never play a game on it that mattered, as it were. It's fun to look around, but there's so many rough edges. However, so is Talishar. Talishar was that for many months. I will, dare I say, unusable to a degree because there were so many hiccups and whatever. However, Flesh and Blood was an exceptionally complex game. Very layered. 10 times as complex, in my opinion, as Star Wars U. Not saying it's better or worse, but Carabast now has dipped its toe in the same vein. It's, in my opinion, it's a solid month or two away from, I think, really being something to spend time with. I'm curious what your involvement is with Carabast. If there's anything between SWUDB and Carabast going forward, any partnerships, any projects, any collaborations.
I will say channels are open. I am having conversations. I am by nature a risk adverse person. I don't know if that was why I became a lawyer or if that's because I was a lawyer. But I am very risk adverse, and I am mindful that SWUDB exists in this penumbra of legality where, Disney owns Star Wars, FFG and other companies license Star Wars. At the end of the day, I am using images that don't belong to me. But, in the same way that every, YouTuber is, right? Like, you're putting images on YouTube and there are content creation guidelines and licenses and all these things. But at the end of the day, I'm taking something that doesn't belong to me and I'm putting it out there. And I'm doing that because I want to play Star Wars Unlimited, right? Like, I'm doing this as a huge fan and I want the game to thrive and succeed. And most people don't build their decks by laying out their cards on a kitchen table and just thinking about it, right? Like, and they don't, most people don't share deck lists by writing them on paper or taking a Polaroid photograph, right? Like, we exist on the internet. Deck lists and cards exist on the internet. So that's the reality of the situation. But I'm very cautious in the steps I take, partly because I'm risk adverse, right? Like, I don't know. Disney and Fantasy Flight are different companies than Living Legend Studios. Their reaction to Carabast might be different than Living Legend's reaction to Talishar. And I already am mindful that, I'm not licensed from Fantasy Flight, so I tend to tread slowly and carefully. And so, for me, I'm as a fan, as a player, I'm like super pumped. I'm super excited. I love going. My goal is to go to every single OP store in Portland, Oregon. There are a lot of OP stores. By my count, there's like 12 right now, and trying to make an appearance at each one for each set. So I'm very big on playing the game in person, but I have small children, and I would not object to playing a little more. I play through webcam games, and I love that. But sometimes that's upstairs. My cards are in a box. As a fan, super pro. As a developer, my developer time is also really precious to me, just because I have to carve it out of my other hobbies, out of my family, out of my job. And so the idea of spending time integrating with something that's then going to get a cease and desist, like, that just makes the risk adverse in me like, I'm super pro. I'm super supportive. And I'm having conversations. I'm making sure that I have structure in place, that I have architectural like paradigms in place so that I can move forward when I have time, when I'm ready, but also when I'm, totally confident that it will continue to exist. I'm not afraid of a cease and desist, right? Like that's not what worries me. I worry about just getting a friendly Discord message saying, "Hey, please don't," right? Like for me, I'm doing this out of like a love of the game, and I have nothing but admiration and respect for Fantasy Flight. And so I'm terrified. I mean, cease and desist, whatever. That's just a lawyer letter. Like what I'm terrified is disapproval, right? Like I'm terrified of disappointment. And so I'm, it's the reason why SWUDB doesn't do proxies, right? Like I get that everybody was really hungry and excited for proxies when we didn't have real cards, but now that we do, the reality of the situation, copy something in a Word. It's trivial. Do whatever you want. But there's something extra about that button that says, please, and I'm not, please make this deck so that I don't have to pay for it. And I'm not getting into an argument, or that's not the intention of the statement about morality of proxies. Like that's a separate conversation. But just that's what that button says on SWUDB, right? It's saying I'm interested in playing with these cards, and I don't want to own them. And I don't want to be the one to put that button on the site, right? Like, you want to take the images from the site, go put them in Microsoft Word, print. Like, I've done that, knock yourself out. But there's that extra step of approval, right? And then I live in fear of getting that Discord message being like, please don't. And then I'm like, oh no, I failed, right? So I am optimistic, and I'm having conversations, but I will probably not be the person to move first, right? Like, I think that's the reality of the situation. I hope Carabast is a success, and I hope it is a huge success because I want to play it, and I hope it's a huge success with FFG's quietly ignoring them, or somewhere on the spectrum of quietly ignoring them to tacit approval, right? Like I have nothing but hope for that, but I'll wait to see what that is before I move forward.
I mean, you don't have to go that far to sort of see the reach or the influence or otherwise sort of the concern about that, because we were once called Wampa Radio, and we were more along the lines of sort of the same approach as you. We weren't told not to do it. We were not threatened. We were not advised or anything. We actually approached them and said, will this cause any issues down the line? As I said, we're in this until the wheels fall off. Like we just want to ensure that we are future-proofing ourselves against any kind of gray areas, murky areas. We don't even want to dip a toe in those murky waters. We just want to be sure that we are well on the right side of everything. And I mean, basically, the advice that we got from their side was, look, we don't care. However, there are situations wherein if our overlords, so to speak, say we don't want them, using our name, we're not going to come after you. We're just not going to be able to collaborate or whatnot. And we're like, okay, that's all we need to hear. It's not like exactly. It's not. It wasn't a thing where I'm not mad, I'm disappointed. It wasn't even that. It was merely an approach of, we just want to do right by you. And like you said, like the fear wasn't being told no. The fear was that they were upset or disapproved or disappointed in that regard. And that's because we just want to create these relationships and have that longevity. LSS and their relationship to Talishar is, and I'm not pulling the veil back on anything here. They've been very upfront about this. Was a year or two ago when Talishar really launched into the mainstream. They went from having 2 or 3 games occurring simultaneously to hundreds occurring simultaneously, which is massive. Their stance on this was essentially, it grows the game and the accessibility of the game for which is otherwise paper only. So that is a good thing. We're okay with it as long as they're not profiting off of it, like if they have to cover their costs and whatever, that's fair. Or B, tournaments are not utilizing it we will never recognize a tournament or deem a tournament official or sanction a tournament that is played through that. And I think that, or I hope rather, that is sort of an approach that FFG takes to Carabast, because I think that Carabast is an excellent tool for players to actually get the reps in, get the testing in necessary, because myself, yourself, like as much of a network as we are connected to within this, I still have times where I will just fire off the flare of, does anyone have time to just play test for about an hour or two? And it'll come back more often than not that we're all kind of busy. And like, I totally get that. So I see the value in Carabast, but I also can kind of see where you're coming from when it comes from
the House of Mouse is a big house, right? Like, and that's the other thing is like Legend Story Studios is they own it completely, right? Whereas Fantasy Flight is getting it, and it, you know, they have to be more cautious, and so they're cautious, so I'm cautious, right? And it's just a kind of cascading of cautiousness.
Yeah, well, LSS owns the IP. They own
right.
everything.
Yeah.
They have no shareholders. They answer to no one but the creator, who is James White. FFG is taking arguably one of the biggest IPs ever and are producing a highly successful card game out of it. They also have to connect and answer to a higher power, as it were. And they are doing it from the capacity of like, hey, we have a great game with great characters, a great story, great lore, great source material. We want people to respect it in the same regards that we do. And if you don't, we can't play ball, you know, like that's the kind of thing. Every
ticket I create for SWUDB, I think of 5 stakeholders, right? There's just the people who use it, right? There's Patreon users who use it because they're actually giving me money. And there's content creators, right? Like their opinion matters more because you tend to be playing a lot more than, you know, Joe on the street. And also if they're using it, then people see them using it and you get this kind of nice feedback loop there. Myself, there are things that I just, you know what? I mean, if I'm overwhelmingly voted in the minority, I will take a step back. But sometimes I come to a fork in the road and it's 60-40. I'm like, you know what? But I'm in the 40. You know, like all animals are created equal, but some animals are created more equal than others, right? Like,
some are more delicious than others. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you know, so there's me, and then, but last but not least, I also always ask, like, what is FFG? And not just like the friendly FFG that we see, but the, you know, there's a legal department, you know, in the background, right? There's stakeholder relationships, there's liaisons. What are they going to think about, you know, this? Like, if this comes up in a meeting, you know, where does that, and I think about that a lot. And so every step I take, I'm always thinking about, like, you know, am I helping people buy packs?
Yeah.
Right. Like, because at the end of the day, if I'm facilitating the purchase of packs of cards, then I will continue to exist. And the moment I facilitate or am perceived to facilitate the diminishment of sales of packs, that's when things get dicey. So, yeah.
Hey, I will say this. There's a lot of decks that I would never look to invest in if I didn't have an opportunity to sort of put them together, visualize them, play around with them, if I didn't have SWUDB to do that. I do have a suggestion that I would like to posit here on this show, which is when I generate an image for a deck, it is not a perfect 16:9 ratio for me to put onto a screen. I have to stretch it a little bit. I don't know if that's
I'll look into that. I started at 16:9, but it's possible that things have slowly shifted over time. I'm bad at math and I don't do image generation in my work. I will work on, I can never guarantee 16:9 if the deck gets too big,
that's
right?
fair.
You know, but I had originally set it at 16:9, 1920 by 1080, very much for that reason. It's possible that some row counts have gotten off. I will revisit Flake.
Oh, it's okay. I'm just curious.
No. But that's the idea, right? Like, why, you know, make it fit on a default YouTube thumbnail. Right?
Yeah, that's basically it. It's like literally, it was just a matter of like I wanted to show a deck up on screen, and I was like, Oh, one of the margins are just like a hair too thin. I got to stretch it out and whatever. It's all good.
I will revisit. That was
damn
always
right.
the goal.
You're damn right. The last thing I want to get into here is the fact that you also have the Force Unlimited podcast, which you co-host, and you were, already blazing trails as with SWUDB. I kind of dragged you into the Twitter sphere to have a public presence so you can sort of answer for your crimes. Now you have kind of launched into a whole other thing. I gave you a little nudge and you took off into a full gallop here, which is great. The Force Unlimited podcast. Can you, for those who may not have ever listened to it or are unaware of it, can you kind of just encapsulate what the vibe is, what that podcast is all about?
So Ned and my joke is that we want to be the McNeil Lair News Hour of Star Wars Unlimited. And for those not
is that a
familiar,
news radio thing?
No, that's a PBS, our public broadcasting. It was news that was, I grew up with it. It's the nightly news, but it was always, it's public broadcast. So it was always dry. It's just like, it's NPR, but news. And, I also refer to us as the, that's interesting of Star Wars Unlimited. It really has, it's a small little podcast. It has its origin in kind of two moments. One is credit where credit is due. I can point to 4 or 5 places that created SWUDB, people who had influence, yourself among them. The Force Unlimited owes its existence to a very specific interview when Xander was on Unplayables. And they asked him what kind of content should people who want to make content, what kind of content should they make? And Xander said, whatever kind of content you want to make. And I was like, that's allowed? Like, what? Like, I've been over here slaving away at the stuff that I thought I was, kind of good at, like my trade, but I'm allowed to just do the one I want to do. And so then I started like, oh man, like I want to be engaged with the community on that level. And Ned, my co-host, I am an out of shape bearded dad who likes talking about Star Wars cards. There's a lot of that in the TCG sphere.
Yeah, that's a tribal. Ned, that's like there's droid, exactly. Jawa, and then that,
and then out of shape bearded dad. Ned is in his day job a data scientist, a statistician. He works at very high level math analysis. He literally has a PhD in nuclear science or physics or something. So like, and he and I were having conversations, and his approach to TCGs is very academic. He reads a lot of actual books about it and stuff like that. And so we were walking home from Frosthaven every week. We parked our cars near each other during our weekly Frosthaven game, and we would talk about I'd keep talking to him about the game, and I tend to get excited about projects and then like fizzle out after a month. And I think by around month 4 or 5, it was probably around like October, November. He's like, God, this guy will not shut up about Star Wars Unlimited. Like, why have we not moved on to whatever new thing Parker's excited about? And so he would talk. He started researching the game and getting kind of excited about it too, and it won him over. And he actually follows a ton of TCGs. And so I was like, you know what? Not one, I want to make content by like recording these conversations, but 2, Ned has a unique viewpoint. Like he runs these. Our most recent episode was on like binomial analysis of the Twickenham results. So he actually ran like all of these things about expected odds versus actualized odds, and like I'm getting a math lesson in every episode or most episodes. Like I don't understand what he's saying, but he teaches me, and then hopefully the listener listens to it too. And it's don't come to us for cool decks, don't come to us for results. We only like release twice a month, so we're pretty behind the times, but it's reasoned and analytical and dry. And if you've got a long road trip, there are worse, if that's your thing. Like we're the that's interesting of podcasts.
I like that though. That's what I sort of plug into, that and the fact that like you're talking about like you're twice a month, a little behind the times. I feel like our Ice Cave Radio at once a week was quote unquote behind the times. That's why we started injecting different types of shows. I listen to a podcast called Busted Open. It's a wrestling podcast. I'm a big wrestling nerd, and everybody already knows that. That said,
so I just want to say the overlap between Star Wars Unlimited fans and wrestling fans is insane. One, it's really high, and two, it's completely like corrupted and warped my Twitter feed because like
we're in your algorithm now.
I don't know who CM Punk is. I didn't know who he was a year ago.
You know now.
Like now I know. Right? I've never watched a wrestling match for more than maybe 5 minutes in my life.
Well,
and I feel like I'm completely caught up on current events, what's going on in AEW and their big switch and Cody. And like, I'm just like, I know, oh man, there's a lot of my brain that is now taken up by that because of Star Wars Unlimited fans.
Dare I just rewind about a minute where you're talking about bearded dads?
Yeah, that's
do we see the common thread there, Parker? A little bit, yeah. But I mean, wrestling fans, I've got plenty of friends with the Busted Open podcast. They are on XM Radio or something like that, or Sirius XM or whatever, and they have an episode every day. So, and they also they're on, and it's like a 4-hour show every day, and they break it up into like 20 or 30 or 40-minute segments that you'll get released like 2 or 3 times over the course of the day of every day. So
wow,
they're dropping audio versions of like 3, but they're doing a 4-hour show every day about wrestling, and I'm like, what the hell? I not that like a lot of the thing is that when Charmer, Doa, and I get together to do an episode, we have always tried to adhere to the 1-hour episode just kind of framework, and we always blow past it. So we always think of like, oh man, we could always do a second episode each week. It's possible. We even discussed about maybe doing the episode and having a separate 20 to 30 minute mailbag add-on that comes out like on the Monday, let's say. And that's still up in the air, just to sort of fill the content schedule. So I feel you on that, because we feel like we're behind the times, and we're putting out 2 or 3 videos or such a week, and like we feel like we need to catch up here. So
I didn't put the Shadows of the Galaxy previews directly into the website because I mean I had high confidence it would work, but the first time doing a second set, I wanted to be at my development machine and not on my phone in case something exploded. And when I got to my machine like 3 hours later, there were already YouTube videos up on like Shadows of the Galaxy. I was like, oh man, this is like twice a week, just 2 dudes talking. And we avoid the current events. We try to make our stuff reasonably timeless, like for that very reason, because it's like I can't get into that keep up mentality. I envy you, but I also like, man, I don't know how. Like that's so much. So good luck.
Yeah, I tell people, I'm like, you may only consume about 2 to 3 hours of my content a week. There is probably about 40 to 50 hours of work put in through the week just to get that out. That doesn't even touch the projects that you don't see that I have to, things like approving merchandise, securing future guests, getting permissions for things, and one. It is a nightmare to a degree, but again, like we said earlier, I wouldn't do this. I don't do this for the pay. I don't do it for the glory or any of that, because at the end of the day, I'm still eating ramen like every day, but I wake up with a big fat stupid smile on my face because I love what I do, and I feel like that's super important. Parker, everybody appreciates this site and the work you put in. We all root for your success. There's one extra segment before we do our goodbyes, which is rapid fire, shoot from the hip, whatever you want to say it. There are the finger guns. Would you like to play a little rapid fire shoot from the hip with us?
I would love to, yeah.
All right, finger guns in the air. Let's do this. We're shooting from the hip.
I hope you're still paying attention, because now I'm going to tell you the most important.
All right, it is time to throw down with one Parker of SWUDB. And your first question is, again, you could elaborate as much or as little as you want. What is your favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movie?
True Lies. Not even close.
Not even close. Not even close.
Not even close. I will say I do have a soft spot for his 2 partnerships with Danny DeVito, and I really hope they do like one more movie before they pass on, because they're older and crustier, and I think it would just be funnier, like grumpy old men, but Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. But no, the best is just underranked in Cameron's work, Schwarzenegger's best work, Jamie Lee Curtis. Like it's just such a great film.
It is first of all, it's hilarious. Tom Arnold is hilarious in this movie.
Yeah.
It is incredibly quotable. I remember showing this movie to people for the first time. We were at a tournament, and we all had an Airbnb. There was about 12 of us in this big Airbnb, and we were trying to figure out. We were there for like 3 nights. I said, one of the nights I'm bringing a DVD. We're all sitting down, and I said, you owe me 30 minutes, and then you can get up and leave. And everybody stayed for the whole thing. It was True Lies, and every time something happened, they're like, oh man, and then they'd be like, there's more. I'm like, you haven't even got to the Harrier jet yet. Like, you haven't even got to the point where they throw a nuke into the bay. You know, like we haven't even got to that part.
So yeah, no, the cast is incredible. Paxton, Carrera, getting Charlton Heston to just be like that cameo as the boss. It's like such a sick essence, you know. So this might be you said Harrier jet. This might be the only time in my life that I get to share this anecdote. So slight veer. There is, you may be of an age. Channel 1 advertised. There was a Pepsi commercial. Where you could exchange coupons, and if you got enough coupons, Pepsi points, you could get. They advertised that you could get a Harrier jet. Well, there's a famous lawsuit that somebody sued because they actually got enough Pepsi points to get the Harrier jet, and they called Pepsi up and were like, "I would like one Harrier jet, please." And Pepsi was like, "Obviously, no." And so they sued, and a judge ruled that no, a reasonable person would not have construed that as an offer to get a Harrier jet. And I remember being in law school reading that case and being just so offended because I was like, I saw that commercial. I thought that was a real offer. Like, I believed it. I mean, admittedly, I was like 12, 14 or something, but I believed it. I wanted that Harrier jet. And like the love of the Harrier jet started with True Lies like that. You know, so.
Look, so there's a documentary that came out, I think, in the past year or two called Pepsi, Where's My Jet? I think it's available on Netflix. I do remember this commercial because I was of the age where I was a impressionable young lad where I saw this and I was like, oh my God. And the beauty of this ad is that the first rendition of it was just Pepsi Harrier jet 30 million points or something like that. I'm not going to spoil the documentary because it's very entertaining and it's a lot greasier than you think it is. But some psychotic rich person was like, hey kid, I like your idea. I'm going to bankroll it. Where they basically just bought cases and cases and cases and skids of Pepsi to figure out what the best thing is. And they're like, it's going to cost us about $500,000 of product to attain this much points. But we could sell that jet for $18 million. But then it's like, okay, how do we transfer the points? We have to hire people to do it. Anyways, it's a big thing, but you're right. It is an incredible... That is worth the deviation from this conversation.
I will absolutely watch that documentary, and I will have seen it the next time I talk to you. Flake.
Perfect. It's well worth it. And also, the best line from True Lies is, have you killed anyone? Yeah, but they were all bad. Perfect line.
Yeah, it's such... Line. Oh, man, that movie is just flawless. Yeah. Okay, hit me.
Next one. What is your walkout music? You're going into the arena, and you want to hype up the crowd. What song plays as you kind of walk your way down into that death match?
Real Thing by Netanya. That is you look lost.
I'm not familiar with that one.
I have I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this. I think I have the musical taste of a woman half my age. I think Spotify is convinced I'm in college and not an out of shape bearded dad. So it's a great song. Look it up. It's a pop. It's about like there's just nothing like The Real Thing. It's rock solid. Love that song.
I believe that people's musical tastes basically just get flash frozen at the point where they leave college. I think that's what it is. Like in 2005 or 6, I think when I was like, yeah, this is it. This is the music I know and like, and we're done.
I think my musical taste got flash frozen at college, and the college keeps getting younger, right? Like I get older.
So yours is more of like okay.
I think I'm locked into whatever is in vogue for 25-year-olds.
Sure.
Maybe I'm thinking too young. Maybe I don't know, 35. But I've seen your takes on Twitter and on music, and I think you and I don't know if it's possible for. I think involving electronic instruments and vocals. I don't think it would be possible for you or my musical taste to diverge more. I'm Calvin Harris, Janelle Monáe, like, you know, like I like up, excited dance music. Like I'm an up person. I have, you know,
We'll
the
take
one
separate
sad
calls,
song
yeah.
I listen to is Johnny Cash's cover of Hurt. Once in a while, I listen to that for a dedicated sad moment, and then back to my life of, you know.
Oh, gotcha. All right, assuming that your life does not change in any capacity, you still do what you do, you still have the daily routine and everything, what Star Wars ship would you like to have? Now, keep in mind, if you say the Executor, you've got to, like, pay for, like, the fuel and do all this stuff and do whatever. Like, it's going to be up there. You got to be responsible for it.
Up until 2 years ago, probably 3 years ago, I would have said the YT 2400, the Outrider, right? Shadows of the Empire on
Dash
Super
Rendar
Nintendo.
Whip, yeah.
Yeah, Dash Rendar ship. That was my jam. I have come around. I actually think I would go with the, it doesn't even have a model yet, the Crimson Firehawk. It is the ship from Young Jedi Adventures, the canon High Republic television show nerds. It's the featured ship on that show, and I like the lines of it. It's a smuggler ship that handles faster and better. So that, and I'm not actually a transporter of goods if I'm keeping my life. So yeah, Crimson Firehawk, favorite ship, and one I would keep if I had my actual life.
I feel like the Razor Crest just is like, it's just kind of like this Winnebago that you can.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we're going to the Grand Canyon. Like everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's got a toilet. It's got a freaking toilet. Like that's
Yeah.
all that matters to me.
Yeah. Just come out with your tents and your gears. You just like, yeah, exactly.
Parker, how do you like your steak cooked?
Dry aged, rare, and paid for by somebody else.
That is a trifecta. I didn't even think of the last part. I love it. Parker, who inspires you?
The probably technical answer, using the real, like, because inspire doesn't, like, inspire means to make you want to do more and be better, and so then the answer is technically like my kids and my wife. But in terms of like somebody like maybe role model, somebody who I aspire to be more like, if fictional characters are allowed, Bandit from Bluey.
I've never seen Bluey. I've been told to watch it though.
You do not have small children, so it's a kid show, but it is magic, right? Like I will say it's probably in a trifecta with like Mr. Rogers and like Sesame Street. It's this Australian show. It's a kid show, but it tackles issues like divorce and death and infertility and like if Sesame. I was reading an article. If Sesame Street is teaching taught like how to read and write, like Bluey teaches emotional intelligence. It teaches kids like how to process weird, impossible to process emotions. And for a long time, it's one of its episodes. I found fun Star Wars, tying back to Star Wars. Fun fact, one of its best episodes, Sleepy Time, was up there as one of the only 10 out of 10 episodes on IMDb, up with Ozymandias of Breaking Bad. This is adults going on the internet and ranking these shows, and it was like a 10 out of 10. One curmudgeon, brought it down. Brilliant episode with music by a composer who wrote German, I'm blanking on the name, composer from like the 1930s, 40s, who wrote symphony songs about all of the planets, and it's actually in Star Wars. The same music from Bluey, this episode Sleep Time, is in Star Wars. Apparently, like George Lucas put it in his like placeholder music, but then like grew attached to it, and so they actually just got it and use it. So some of the Star Wars original trilogy music is now also, but it's still like from the public domain.
Yeah,
and it's in Bluey, so you'll hear it and you'll recognize. You're like, wait a moment.
That's cool.
I know this. So anyways, beautiful, brilliant episode. So, and it's about dogs. Who doesn't like dogs?
What is your favorite aspect in Star Wars Unlimited?
Vigilance. Command is a close second, but I don't know if I like Vigilance because of the way it's framed in Spark of Rebellion or like overall, but right now, Vigilance.
What character do you believe deserves to be a leader in Star Wars Unlimited?
All right. Two answers. First answer, top answer is Netrunner. The dream I always had in Netrunner was they had, if you never played Netrunner, they had characters that you were in the same way as leaders. And I always wanted a leader to change factions, a new set to come out. And like, there was one guy named Wizard who played video games. And he was an anarch. And I was like, what if he grew up and like realized video games are an art form and wanted to be a shaper or something? So I was always like, why don't they do that? And that's what they're doing in Star Wars Unlimited. And I'm so excited. So my real answer is the 18 we've already seen. Like, I want those leaders in different, colors. Give me old wise Leia, give me in blue, give me cunning Jabba's palace Leia in yellow, give me little Leia. But actual characters, Fee Genoa from Bad Batch, voiced by Wanda Sykes, Ace Callisto from Young Jedi Adventures, voiced by Tig Notaro, and Hype Faison, voiced by Donald Faison from Scrubs. Comedians I like because I would actually be able to get them to sign my cards.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I do like that. I like that. Actually.
You wouldn't be able to, like, I mean, you nerd people go to conventions and there's a million people signing up to see them. But like Wanda Sykes, you can see her down at like a laugh club.
And
get her to sign your card.
Bust out your showcase, Wanda Sykes.
Yeah. So that's, any comedian I can get to sign.
Well, now I want a Larry David card so that I can have him sign it and say next to the Wanda Sykes card where he's just like, hey, is that big ass Wanda from Curb Your Enthusiasm? That would be pretty hilarious. All right, Parker, this is probably the most important question of the day. Skittles or M&Ms? Whatever iteration that you want.
You might appreciate this answer, Flake. Canadian M&Ms, Skittles, American M&Ms.
Really?
I'd rather have M&Ms with like anytime I can choose Canadian chocolate over American chocolate, I will take it. So much better. But I generally prefer M&Ms, but Skittles are the same north and south of the border, but American M&Ms just get worse and worse.
Chocolate up for M&Ms, another one. All right, here's one. This is more of an either or. You are granted the ability to fly, okay? Congratulations. However, it comes with one of your choice of two caveats. The first being you could only fly when your eyes are closed. The second being you could only fly in the luge position. So like kind of like on your back, like looking with your basically toes pointed. You're flying wherever your toes are pointing. Which do you choose?
If I open my eyes, do I fall or can I hover?
No, you start falling.
Oh, then luge, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one. I've heard people say, well, I'll close my eyes. I'll just gain some altitude. I'll look around. I'll close. I'll go. And I'll just kind of do this like Flappy Bird kind of thing as they
were. Yeah. That I'd be nervous about like downtown hitting a building or something. No, luge, just,
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Last one for you is, what is your secret talent?
Breakfast carbs.
That's a talent now, like pancakes.
Like making breakfast carbs. I make a mean. I've perfected the scone, if I do say myself. So myself, I make great souffle, puffy Japanese style pancakes, apple cinnamon waffles. Like I feel like I've got an absolute lock on breakfast carbs.
All right,
and I know you like food stuff, Flake. For your listeners, put like a tablespoon of maple syrup into some whipped cream when you whip it up, because I know you're whipping your whipped cream from scratch.
Definitely.
So good.
Definitely. I would like to take you back to the point where I mentioned I make no money and just eat ramen. So I think that whipping my own cream is possibly, that is the pipe dream that I have.
That's an indulgence. Yeah, it's...
You know, when you're talking about where do you see SWUDB in a month and 6 months? To me, it's like, where do you see? I'm like, well, in 6 months, I would love to eat a hot meal. Like, it would be amazing.
Well, next time you come to Portland, Flake, I will take you around. We have weird, wild food, and I will feed the hell out of you.
I would love that. I appreciate you, ladies and gentlemen. Parker of SWUDB. Give him your love, your accolades. Go sign up for SWUDB.com. Go create an account, as well as go support on Patreon. I think that's an important thing because you all are getting it easy, okay? You're getting it easy. So support this wonderful lad here who has done so much great things and who will then ensure that those deck pictures are going to be a perfect 16:9, so I don't have to take 3 calories out of my life to slide the mouse over to extend it. So I appreciate you, man.
Thank you, Flake.
No worries.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks for being on the show, my man. Any shout outs, any sort of pluggables you'd like to toss in there before we say goodbye?
No, I think I've mentioned so many content creators already on your show. No, just find me on your favorite Discord. If you have a SWU Discord and I'm not in it, hit me up. I can't get enough.
Best place to find you on one of these Discords is probably the Ice Cave Radio one, because you are
I have my own color.
Yeah. You're
easy
there.
to pick out.
You're on the marquee, my friend. You're on the top of the card. Congratulations. All right, friends, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all SWU ages. It's great to have you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Hello There. So now we're going to say goodbye then. See you later, my friends.
Goodbye then.
Goodbye.
Hark! Troopers. What is up, SWU community? Just wanted to wish safe travels to everybody going to Minnesota this weekend. I hope the cabin doors stay on your plane. I hope your pull rates are disgusting. And I hope you forge some lifelong friendships. A few notes. Garbage rollers, when you're playing with other people, they're not oopsies, it's just cheating. Doa, you have to get the two of them to hug. Just Jack, your podcast is a circus of monkeys. Congratulations on getting to work with some actual professionals. Tyler, this is D-House. Banana Crapshoot, everybody there has heard of Star Wars Unlimited. It's okay, you can rest now.
So uncivilized.